At the end of many reveals for yesterday's N7 day, which I will compile in a different video, we got one final reveal, and that is a new poster of the N7 from the trailer. And aside from the main N7 figure, there is an unbelievable amount of very revealing details here. So let's do a deep dive into everything we can find. First off, let's start with the two obvious and wildest figures here. There is an Angara here, and this Angara, at first I thought it could be Jaal, but the markings on the armor are not matching his armor from Andromeda. The lines on the side of his legs only went about halfway around the entire leg. This one is about 3/4. There's also no long hanging pieces in the front or back of his armor, like it is in the original armor from Andromeda. But I will say this does look like an Andromeda armor design. These lines on the sides of the leg match the armor sets we see at the Angara home base on Aya. This set also has the same drapery that we see on their back. Originally, I theorized that the Jardan could have created the Angara and located them in more than just the Helios cluster before arriving to the Andromeda galaxy. But it wouldn't make sense for two completely separated colonies of Angara to have the exact same armor. So I would lean towards this Angara being from the Andromeda galaxy and from the Andromeda timeline. When this image takes place and how all of these different races got here, I have no idea. But this isn't like anything we've seen in Andromeda either. The aesthetics very much remind me of the Purgatory Bar. The next super wild and extremely weird alien we see here is this random singular Geth. This is clearly a Geth based off of the head and the arms, but this armor set / robe is definitely new. And this design just seems kind of random and maybe a little out of place. But maybe the Geth have assimilated or are in the process of assimilating into the regular everyday culture with all the other alien races, which seems to be the implication of this scene. No one seems shocked that this Geth is here, no one is being hostile towards it. If this Geth is new to communicating and socializing, I'd assume that would put this close to the ending of Mass Effect 3, if they have been reactivated following any ending or had found a way to survive. I made a whole video on the Geth, so go check it out to see how they can connect to both timelines. But this Geth being alongside this Angara is so confusing. From what we know in current canon, these two races would have never met, which I'll go more into at the end of the video. Next up, we have this big beefy salarian. And this salarian is clearly larger than your standard salarian seen on the right side of the image. This larger one has a larger frame and looks more muscular. And this reminds me of the Listheni. They are specifically from the Terminus system and usually keep their distance from Council space, especially during the events of the Reaper War. There's a long, complicated history, but essentially their culture is very different from your typical Salarian culture. And this one in the poster could actually be a female Listheni because their population is not dominated by men like the Salarian culture is. Clashing cultures erupted a war between the Listheni and the Salarians, and the Listheni essentially bred their offspring with Krogan DNA to make them more resilient, hence their size and build. They still ended up losing the war and then isolated to the Terminus system. And we've never seen one in-game, but there is a possible one named Tazik, who is from the comics, and Tazik was an agent of the Shadow Broker, the one before Liara took over. And although he eventually does end up working for Liara as a Shadow Broker in the end, not knowing the Shadow Broker's identity changed, Tazik was the one who originally was in possession of Shepard's body, specifically retrieving it for the original Shadow Broker. He's the one that Liara and Farron steal Shepard's body from, and we don't know his fate. His armor looks different than in the comics, so I don't really think this is him, but it's definitely a possibility. There's also known Listheni to be on Omega, so that could be related to this image as well. And I do have to say that this might not even be a Listheni. The back of its head doesn't look like it necessarily has two cones coming out, but it could just be the angle and the painting. So while I think this is a Listheni, it might not be. Either way, they're talking to someone who's wearing a lab coat, but I don't really see anything of note with their design. We're also seeing multiple Krogan and Salarians in one space. They don't seem to be interacting with each other, but maybe there's been a peaceful enough situation after Mass Effect 3 that these two characters could be on good enough terms to coexist like this. Next up, I think this could be a Quarian helmet. They look like they're sitting down possibly, but we can't see the rest of their body, so it's really hard to say. It also kind of looks like a blob, so I'm kind of unsure. And I don't really see any other possible Quarians in this image except maybe this one to the right. It looks like their head has an open face / headpiece that is maybe open, as if they took their mask off. But we see that the top half of their legs are straight, so who knows if their legs are like tallies from the knee down. There's also these two people, possible aliens, talking here next to the large salarian. The masculine character on the left looks like they have face markings of some kind, and the feminine one on the right reminds me of Edie, but this one looks like she may have a lumpy head, maybe another type of alien. Aliens with human features that are slightly altered may be more easily made in Unreal's metahumans, so maybe we'll be seeing more additions of human-adjacent aliens in the next game as well. To the left of them, we see what looks like a beefy Turian with more form-fitting armor than we're used to seeing. The fit of it kind of reminds me of the Angara fit, but there isn't a large open neck area like Garrus has, and I find that interesting. And we also have a human serving the Asari, which I don't think there's anything noteworthy there either. I would also like to point out these faces and red bodies. They could very well just be bright from the lighting, but they could also be virtual aliens, and I know that's a stretch, but maybe these are virtual bartenders, and the virtual aliens have found a way to integrate within society. There are already virtual aliens that swapped consciousness with other aliens to join the physical world, and that are currently walking around the Citadel. So it would be really cool to see their virtual culture assimilated into a place like the Citadel, where all the races live together. I also want to point out these two right here. This is possibly a human with a top-knot hairstyle, walking with a Turian who has an extremely recognizable eye visor. We know Garrus and Vetra had visors, but I don't remember any other Turians with one. And this would be the same type of visor that Garrus had, specifically the shape and being on his left eye. And I gotta say, the Mass Effect team had to have known people would think this is Garrus. Obviously, it's a male Turian, but this eye visor is so iconic to Garrus's look, I find it extremely odd that they decided to put this in here. They're doing just enough to tease aspects of the original trilogy without confirming anything, and it's driving me insane. But this doesn't look like Liara to me. The head shape doesn't really fit in Asari's head shape. It looks more like she has human hair. There's also this figure who looks like they're standing on the stairs with what kind of looks like a Pathfinder's helmet. The way the white wraps around it is very reminiscent of the Pathfinder design, but it's pretty blurry and hard to tell what the exact shape is. But we do see what looks like another new design, possibly. And that is this figure with a very long neck. There's one here at the top balcony who doesn't look very inviting, and they stand out amongst the other figures as well. Specifically the ones behind it, it looks like it's intentionally made to be prominent. We also see humans and Volus and Hanar all throughout the image. Clearly the typical original trilogy's races, except for Quarians, Drell, and Batarians. If the two I pointed out aren't a Quarian, then I don't think I see any in this image that I'm actually sure about. We also don't see any Elcor, and there are no Drell anywhere. I also don't think we see any of the bird-like aliens called the Raloi, which I do hope they eventually introduce, but I don't see any here. I also want to point out their clothing. To the left, we're seeing this Asari in clothing from the original trilogy. It's the same dress we also see in the Omega/Ilium looking concept art on the side of the building. The two humans on the right also look like they're wearing clothing from the original trilogy as well. The woman on the right specifically has the exact same suit as Liara from Mass Effect 1. These suits were worn by scientists and doctors throughout the series. And they have this exact same text on their arm patch. You can even see the similar text on this figure's arm in the image, but it does look like it could be backwards. In the original trilogy, majority of these said X-05 with kind of a bunch of letters underneath it that don't translate to anything, but Chakwas said SR2, so maybe this woman is a new ship doctor, perhaps? It is kind of odd and counterproductive though, because it looks like she's holding a possible sharp weapon. But anyways, is Liara in this image? And is our protagonist in this image? I, for one, do not see the character from yesterday's clip, but I do see two possible Liaras. The first one is this Asari in the front left. She's getting a drink, and we know Liara owns a dress just like this. Now this one looks less likely than the other one, which takes me to this Asari in the middle, who looks like they're talking with the Angara about something maybe important. The Angara is leaning on the table with their hand outstretched, maybe talking about something serious. And while this doesn't look like Liara's outfit from the trailer, it does have a white and blue/black look to it, which could be in the line with her iconic colors. Maybe the uncomfortable Geth could even be her bodyguard. This would explain why Liara would be speaking with a Geth in the clip from last year. Maybe she has new Geth connections. And Gamble did like a tweet where someone says this is Liara and her Geth bodyguard. And the Geth's body language does seem kind of dominating almost. And they don't seem mid-stride or to be in the process of going anywhere, they're just kind of standing there. So maybe? This Asari doesn't look like Arya though. It would make sense for Arya to be in a place like this, and we've already seen 2 Omega logos in the Omega/Ilium concept art, so I assume we'll see Arya again. But I can't see Arya sitting in a place that doesn't establish her as a ruler of everyone there. Like we saw on Omega, she would probably want a special designated seating area, and her body posing would be more dominating and less inviting. This doesn't give me King of the Hill vibes. Maybe it could still be Arya. She does have white sleeves on her previous iconic outfit, but this could also be Liara in my opinion. But I don't really think Arya or Liara would need a Geth bodyguard. But who knows? Up at the top level, there's some oddly shaped heads, but that's probably because of how far away they are. So I don't really think there's any major reason to dissect those too much, except for that weird, ominous, long-necked character. At the bar on the right, we see more Hanar, Asari, and what look like Salarians and humans. So again, not much to look through there. I think I've covered everything in the image that is separate from the N7 agent's body, but I will say that, as I said in my last video, the trailer gives me vibes of a secret undercover agent that takes on a more darker, risque mission, who would be seen in a place like Omega and Ilium and Purgatory. And honestly, I think that would be the perfect re-entry into the franchise. The trailer has a James Bond/Blade Runner feel to it, and everything about the N7 agent's outfit is silent. Between the shoes barely making any noise to the silencer on the gun and blacked out visor, this is a person trying to remain in the shadows, and a person who is remaining in the shadows doing secretive work, like N7s have been known for. They would frequent a place like Omega to not only deal with crime, but to also find out information. Which is why I think this image of the N7 agent and this location absolutely makes sense as a combination that reveals the protagonist of the next game. That's how I interpret all of this anyways. I could totally see an N7 agent taking on the darker, smaller scale corruption, or even contributing to it if you so choose, and not doing another Reaper versus Shepard saving the entire galaxy large-scale story. I also think the red and blue here is indicative of the Paragon and Renegade system returning. But if this next game is the re-entry into a trilogy, you would need an introduction to both the character and the world again. And I think that would be a good way to do it. What do you guys think? Something else that's really important to remember when looking at this is when it comes to the timeline, these aliens do not overlap. And I'll do a complete timeline theory breakdown, but the Angara and Geth being here is very confusing. The art Kilasia had Quarians, Drell, Batarian, Hanar, Elcor, and Volus aboard its 20,000 member crew. In this image, I don't see any confirmed Drell, Quarians, or Batarians, or Elcor. The Kilasia leaves the Milky Way galaxy in 2186, and then is in cryo until their plague outbreak in 2753, where they sent their distress call before going back into cryo. If this is the message in Andromeda that we get at the end of the game, Then this message isn't received until 2819, 66 years later. I bring this up because at the moment there isn't any of these species in Andromeda, and we'd have to have the Chelyssia arrive in the Helios cluster for this to even be possible. And while there are Hanar and Volus here, we don't see any Quarian, Drell, Batarian, or Elcor, which were on the same ship, meaning only half of the Chelyssia's races are in this image. So to me, this is confusing because of this Angara here. In my opinion, the Angara is wearing the same we see from the Helios cluster, and like I said, it would be odd to see other Angara have the exact same designs if there are multiple colonies across different galaxies. So I don't think this Angara is from the Milky Way galaxy, I think they're from Andromeda. So the combination of Asari, Turian, Hanar, Volus, Listheni, Geth, and Angara is so unbelievably confusing. I have no doubt the Geth could have easily survived, or could have even been reactivated after a possible destroy ending, so that one doesn't really confuse me because there are so many possibilities for their survival. But as far as we know, no Geth went to the Andromeda galaxy. But their Geth telescope was surveilling beyond the Milky Way galaxy, but for what, we never found out. So obviously this many races altogether brings up more questions than answers. But I have to say I am happy to see this many races together regardless. I truly think before going to Andromeda, if that's what is happening, is that we should be able to see the aftermath of Mass Effect 3, and I hope that means the races of the Milky Way galaxy live in better harmony. Races hating each other is such a tired sci-fi/fantasy trope, and I think there are now much more interesting stories to tell than just trying to get races to work together and not hate each other. And before anyone even points this out, yes, I know this is just concept art, it's just early work. A lot of this could change by the time the game comes out. The last we knew, the game was still in pre-production. So yes, I know that even analyzing it to this extent might be useless. But this early into production, there's no wrong or right with these guesses. So just have fun. So what do you think about not seeing any Quarians, or any Drell, or any Elcor? What do you think about seeing this Angara? Do you see something that I didn't see? What do you think about everything that I pointed out, and are there any things that you think I got wrong? Let me know in the comments, and be on the lookout for more Mass Effect content coming soon. I will be doing a complete breakdown of everything we got for N7 Day, and once I've done that, I'll make a theory and timeline video. So subscribe for more, and thank you for watching.